I wasn't a good drug dealer either. And absolute horrible drug dealer. I would sell my pills to a lady. She would just stick them in a safe and hold on to them because she knew that a week later I was going to come back and buy them for $10 more a piece, you know.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the #1 mental health and addiction podcast, the Hopeaholics. I am your girl, Natalie Eva Marie, and these are my boys.
I'm Chad.
Hi, I'm Shane.
Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and follow us on our socials and wherever you get your podcasts.
Got a new episode dropping every Monday and Thursday. Please come check it out.
This episode is brought to you by the Infinity Group. You guys, if you or a loved one is suffering, please call us today. The number is right here on the screen. We are here for you 24/7. Now, let's get into the episode.
She just gave me the thumbs up. Kris, welcome. Welcome to the Hopeaholics Podcast. Welcome back to the studio.
Back, baby.
Yeah, this isn't your first rodeo.
No, not at all. I came in and hung out for the Tuesday night meeting.
Yeah, Tuesday night meeting, Recover Out Loud.
That's right.
It's a good meeting. It was a really good meeting.
Great meeting.
Mm-hmm. We're always waiting for you, boss.
I just did it.
Yeah,
what do you
sure,
mean? I already did it.
You did your thing.
I said, welcome, Kris, to the Hopeaholics
little bit
Podcast.
different, huh?
That's what I always do.
I think me and Shane didn't know.
Yeah, we were just kind of, we thought you wanted to, you know what I'm saying?
You
Keep going. It seemed like it.
He always to start to.
Yeah, baby. Here we are.
Yeah.
How you doing? He's a
doing
big fella.
great.
He's got huge calves. They're about twice my size.
You know what? People always ask me, like, what's the secret, man? Like, how do you get such big legs? And I said, I've just been a big guy, so I get off the couch, you know? And it's kind of like the case. I don't do a lot of leg day.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's this really weird thing with men, right? Women have their own envy thing,
Yeah.
But men have pec envy and calf envy.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Calves are great.
No,
Not
it's
gonna
very
lie.
odd.
But
It's
did you
so
say calf?
true.
We have calf,
Calf envy.
and
Yes.
pecker envy.
Peck envy. Peck.
Pecker.
Yeah, pec.
Pecker.
Pectoral.
Oh, okay.
Pectoral.
I thought we were talking.
But it's funny he mentioned calf because I was looking at yours the other day when you were on the treadmill for about 20 seconds. They're cut pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get my calves are from doing the stairs.
Yeah, they're cut pretty good.
That's
Yeah.
all right. Well, now we're into the calf envy and everything. You got nice calves too, Shane.
Thank you.
Wanted to let you know.
Appreciate
Yeah, you have great ones.
So you got that going.
Yeah,
it. That's about
at
it,
least.
though. At least that. Thanks.
So, Kris,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
I recall that you started getting loaded at a pretty young age.
No, it's actually not. I'm sorry to bust that bubble real quick, but let me just go ahead and get that out of the way. Like, I started drinking. Like, I drank, right? I don't even remember the effect of it, though. Like, about 12 years old, I drank my first beer just to be like my parents and all the people I saw kicking it. But I didn't start taking opiates. Like, my downhill trajectory didn't start till I was 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wait, to do a little, like, backtrack. You grew up Savannah, Georgia,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, everybody's going to kill me if I don't mention Effingham County. Everybody, you know, affectionately calls it Methingham.
Oh, my gosh.
But it's
wow.
Effingham County, and it's about 30 minutes north of Savannah.
Okay.
So I grew up, like, my granddaddy was a farmer. And, you know, we grew up on a family plot of land. And, yeah, it was real laid back, real
How
chill.
many siblings?
One. 10 years younger than me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not like me at all.
Okay, so how did you grow up then? Like, you started drinking at a young age just because it was kind of like what you saw your parents doing, or?
Yeah, so my parents weren't big drinkers at all, right? And we grew up, like I said, family plot of land. Our trailer, we lived in a double wide. It was here. My aunt and uncle had a house here. Big, everybody on the family.
Yeah.
And my parents worked a lot, and then they would sponsor these softball teams. And if you know anything about men's league softball, those guys get down. And they would have these big banquets after they'd win, right? And I'd see everybody drinking and having a good time. And I was like, well, I want to be like them. I see them doing it, right? So me and my cousin, and I'm going to age myself here. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Southpaw beer. It was this nasty old beer with a fighting kangaroo on the front of the can, and super old school. And my uncle drank those. And my parents didn't drink. Like I said, maybe a couple of Bartles, you know, wine coolers things or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, like my cousin snuck a couple of them, and I went over to his house. We were going to meet at, like, let's just say midnight. And I remember watching the fan go around at 11:30, like just timing it for midnight. Had no idea what to expect, truthfully. I just wanted to be like everybody else. And I go over there and he's asleep, you know, so there's a vast difference already in the way that I was already thinking about what that might look like. So I think I drank my whole beer, and then he poured his out. And
Oh, wow.
I think I got kind of mad at him. I was like, what in the world, man? I stayed up waiting for midnight, and this was supposed to be this amazing experience, and you poured it out.
Yeah. So when did it start to get out of control and things started to kind of derail, I guess, from a normal, typical life, perhaps?
After I was introduced to opiates at 30, like I had what one might call a somewhat in control drinking career, but the fact that I got to justify that probably explains more that it was out of control than I admit at some point. But I, you know,
but it had no like negative effect on your life.
None. I had no DUIs. I didn't live under a bridge. I didn't wear a trench coat.
Wasn't losing jobs.
Not typically. No, I was very restless, irritable, and discontent in my life, but it didn't manifest itself by me being a complete drunk and a blackout guy, right? Because in my mind, that was the lowest form of low.
Sure.
You really can't get any lower than what an alcoholic is, right? Because I'd seen my step-grandfather, who was an alcoholic, me and my grandmother, who I spent a lot of time with, would take him down the road to the package shop. He'd come back out of the package shop with a pint of gin in each pocket and one in his hand, right? And that was for the day. And he'd just get wasted, piss all over himself on the floor, and you know, just nasty stuff. And I was like, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to do that. So I made a pact with myself. I was in my 20s at some point, and I said, you know, and I had some experimentation before then. Don't get it twisted. You know, I drank, did a little coke, and but nothing I couldn't walk away from, right? Nothing I couldn't walk away from. And then I got to a point where probably in my mid-20s, I said, okay, I'm going to keep this thing to a Saturday. I'm a big Georgia Bulldogs fan, go Dogs.
Yeah.
Football especially, and we would, you know, watch the game. That was my thing. And I had this 32-ounce Georgia Bulldogs cup that I'd gotten from a game, and I would buy an 18-pack of Coors Light Tall Boys, and I would only drink on Saturdays, but I neglected to tell myself until now I realized I was drinking those in 4 hours, you know, like just pounding them. Crashing weddings in a small town I just moved into. It was just nuts. And but still, there was nothing there particularly that was troublesome.
Sure.
Nothing gave me any kind of rise for caution or anything like that. So
until
opiates.
And how did that get introduced?
A little here, a little there. Party. You know, take one of these. I watched my cousin kind of throw his life down the drain at an early age with opiates, and another one of those I'm never going to do that moments, right? Until somebody came around with these little blue pills when they first came out. This was probably 2006-ish, 2009, somewhere in that range. And somebody went to the grocery store to get some marinade for some chicken. We were boys drinking around the fire. We were going to grill some chicken. You got to burn shit. And he came back. He said, hey, I just ran into so-and-so at the store. He gave me this little thing. And he said, they're super strong, though. So I was like, well, just give me a quarter of it. And I took that, and about 30 minutes later, I said, I need to leave now before I can't leave. But also, at the same time, internally, I was saying, this is the best thing I've ever felt in my life, right?
And what pill was that?
Roxy, is what they call Roxy's where I'm from, but it was a 30 milligram oxycodone instant release. Yeah, so, and they were real. You know, there was no such thing as fentanyl back then, at least in that sense, and in the sense that it is today. And I don't know, I was working as an apartment maintenance technician at the time, and I found myself little and alone over, you know, a period of 6-8 months or whatever. I'd be going into people's apartments with fake work orders and looking in their medicine cabinets and dipping.
Wow.
Right. And it didn't take very long to get there. But yet again, you know, keep in mind, I didn't see a problem with it. I just was like, well, they're not using them. They're from, you know, 2010 and it's now 2012, whatever the case may be.
Sure.
And I'm like, they're obviously, they don't need them as much as I do. And, but I remember the day that there was a switch. Right, and I like to use this analogy for I consider myself an alcoholic. When I look back at my career, there's no doubt that I use and drink alcoholically, based on the idea that once I start, I can't stop, and if I do stop, I can't stay stopped. Right, that's apparent for me. But I remember the day we call it a pickle theory, right? And if you take a cucumber, and believe it or not, I've had to explain to some people that pickles are cucumbers, right? Some people didn't know that, but anyway, it was funny to me. And you take a cucumber, stick it in a jar of vinegar, you leave it there for any amount of time. I don't know exactly how long it takes, but when I take it out now, it's a pickle, and no amount of wishing or hoping is going to make it a cucumber again. And I don't remember exactly how that happened for me, but I remember one day I was sick. I was at work, and I was working in a meat department at a grocery store. And I remember feeling horrible, and I decided I'm done. I'm just going home. I got the flu. Obviously, I got the flu. Something's off, and I got home, and I called my wife at the time, And I said, you know, I came home early today. I got the flu. She said, yeah, I think I got the flu too. And I said, I'm aching all over. I just want to go crawl into bed and sleep it off, you know. And the thought occurred. I was like, well, you know, if we got to be sick, we might as well not be in pain and sick at the same time. I had no experience with withdrawal. I didn't know what was going on. So we decided that we'd go get a little pill, a little OC, right? And we split it in half and took it. And on the way home from buying that little pill, all the symptoms went away. And I looked over her and I was like, oh, shit, I think there's something going on here, you know. So I got to researching withdrawal symptoms and this, that, and the other. And I found out that
It wasn't the flu.
it wasn't the flu. I wish it had been the flu, you know.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I think that would have probably, you know, I was heading down that road anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that, you know, it started going downhill pretty quick. So like I said, I drank my first beer at 12, no real effect. Don't remember if I even got buzzed or anything. And then up till 30, no consequences whatsoever. From 30 to 40, trash. Just
Really?
a complete train wreck, you know?
And you said wife? So you were
Yeah.
married.
Yeah, I was married. We were together for, God, how long were we together? We were together for 5 years before I asked her to marry me. And then I got married to her because the thought of not being with her was scarier than being with her, even
Sure.
though I didn't want to marry her.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm also a codependent
Yep.
kind of guy. And, or was a codependent kind of guy. Let me make sure I put that in the past because that's where it belongs.
Yep.
And yeah, she's dead now. She passed away as a result of an overdose. She couldn't get away from this disease.
Wow.
Yeah, they found a poor girl in a hotel room on a mattress. So, but yeah, I was married for a period of time.
And when did you guys separate?
When I moved to California, well, probably 2017, like I said, complete train wreck by that point. Absolute dumpster fire going on. And my story's got all the good stuff, right? All the best stuff that you would hope to have as a good heroin junkie. You know, I got homelessness, sleeping in the woods. I slept for a period of time behind a goat pen in the woods, and I'd get up every couple hours and start a fire and shoot up and then lay there and stay warm by the little fire, and it would go out and I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up cold and I'd start a fire again, and
Oh my goodness.
just horrendous.
So you went from like literally taking half a pill to then all of a sudden full blown heroin.
Yeah, and looking back, right, history has a way of seeming like it was like this, and it wasn't. Right, I want to make sure I'm clear on that. It didn't happen overnight for me. It happened for me in the sense that, you know, I started up saying, well, I asked my friends where I'm buying the pills. They're like, what doctor are you going to? So they turn me on to the doctor for $100, right? And then I go to the doctor, and then I'm getting my own stuff, and then my wife goes to the doctor, and she's getting her own stuff. And each step of that, right, every time I progress, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be able to control better now because I have more.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I can make money.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. And but yeah, so it kind of went that direction. Of course, they have this, you know, pestilent thing where you got to take drug tests when you go to the doctor to stay state compliant. And for me, one day, the whole thing progressed over a series of years where I would go, she would go, 2 weeks apart. So we were like, we got this worked out. This is magic.
So you
right?
guys were in your addiction together.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Deep.
Yeah.
And we had this thing going on where it's like, okay, I'll go at the first of the month. You go in the middle of the month. We'll always have pills all month long, and we can even sell some of them and make some money and pay our bills. And because I couldn't keep a job, and she couldn't keep anything more than a server gig. Not that there's anything wrong with the server gig, but you can absolutely do that loaded.
Yeah.
You know, and I've done it too.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
I've done it.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
Because I am totally not functional, and everybody I'd be serving to would be working for the FBI.
I mean, I eventually got fired.
Oh, that's
so
hilarious.
clearly me thinking that I can is a fallacy.
I want to ask you a question though.
Sure.
When you were, let's go back to when you had your very first flu symptoms.
Yeah.
Right, and you realized that was withdrawal. What went through your mind at that moment? Were you like, "Fuck, I'm addicted now"?
No, my mind works in a very solution-oriented way. So it was like, okay, well, I know how to prevent this. It wasn't like stop doing the drugs. It's okay. Now this is just another thing to manage. It's not a big deal. So as long as I never be without a pill, I never get sick.
Right.
So
that just kind of started the real race, though.
oh yeah, absolutely.
That started the race.
Absolutely, no one was safe. No one was safe. You know, and yeah, man, it you know. Got to where my little plan, twice a month deal wasn't working out very well. I wasn't a good drug dealer either. And absolute horrible drug dealer. I would sell my pills to a lady. She would just stick them in a safe and hold on to them because she knew that a week later I was going to come back and buy them for $10 more a piece, Huh?
Jesus.
Yeah, I was a horrible drug dealer.
I mean, any logical person like listening to this, right?
Right.
It's like, this is the insanity that all of us addicts and alcoholics take us to. Cause like the moment that you're working as like the apartment manager and making fake work orders to go look at other people to see, if they have pills for you to then steal.
Yeah.
Usually any normal person, that would be like, maybe I have a problem. This is abnormal behavior.
Yes.
But in our heads, it's like, no, of course. I mean, like, they're not using it. They don't need it anymore.
Absolutely.
So I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Maladjusted to life. Can't differentiate the true from the false. I'm that guy. And my insanity, you mentioned that word because it's and it is a poignant word. It's, I've heard the old expression, the definition for insanity is repeating the same thing over and over. For me, insanity was more about control, right? Or lack thereof. And my illusion of thinking I could still control a situation that was absolutely off the rails.
Totally.
There's insanity for me, right? Because I wasn't necessarily doing the same thing over and over. I would learn from the things that didn't work, and I would then apply a different tactic.
Sure.
And I'd buy the time-locked safe for my pills, or I'd give the key to my mother, and then in three hours when she's asleep and they're snoring, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go sneak the key.
Yeah.
All kind of crazy shit. You know what I mean?
For
It's
sure.
just nuts, man.
It's amazing the stuff that we'll do in the midst of being like high when we're like feeling good, right? And then you like, fuck, why did I just give that fucking whole bag of dope to
Start
my mom?
coming down a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah,
And then you're like, and then you're screaming and yelling at people. And
I think
it's
like
just,
the
like-
craziness is like the justification too that we tell ourselves, making it like this makes sense when like there's no sense to be made, but we're trying to make sense of it in our own brains of this totally is the right move.
For me, it was like to get them off of my back so I could continue to use, because I didn't want, I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, you can hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll go to treatment tomorrow. But like the tomorrow that never comes tomorrow, not like actually tomorrow.
Yeah. I got to get some things in order. Meanwhile, I got no money, no thing.
Oh, that's my favorite, man. When we get so many phone calls and like, or like on a DM and somebody's like, well, I've got to do all this stuff. And I'm like, do you? Because you don't. What you need to do is get into treatment before you die.
I joke with guys about this excuse, but it was my excuse. So I went to sober livings and they had this thing in Georgia. I didn't have any insurance, right? And they have a state-funded detox program, and they'll tell you when you walk in the door, just so you know, this is a mental health hospital first, and then detox is secondary. So you're in there with some people that have absolutely cheese off cracker, completely out there, right? And God bless them, right? I'm so fortunate that I never had to deal with anything to that degree. However, I in and out. Especially, I slept behind the goat pen behind the detox, just so that whenever I couldn't get money that particular day, I'd go to detox, get cleaned up a little bit for a couple of days, and back behind the goat pen. And that's no lie. It was literal, all night when I'm trying to sleep. It's kind of funny now looking back on it, right? But yeah, man, like heroin just did me in a way that I'd never anticipated from the get, right? And my plan didn't work. So one day we said, hey, buddy, can you hook me up with some stuff? And he's like, well, no, I can't, but I can get you some heroin. And my rule, again, another one of those, I'm never going to do that, was putting a needle in my arm. Right? And I had these tattoos and I had all that, but going to get my blood drawn, I'd almost hyperventilate and pass out. I couldn't stand the idea that something was going in my skin. But he went and got it. And this went on a few weeks, and I was snorting it or smoking it or whatever I could figure to do. And meanwhile, he's getting it and shooting it in my van beside me, and I'm watching this guy just melt into the seat. I'm like, that looks so delicious right now. I don't know what there is about. So one day I just said, show me. And I looked over at my wife at the time after he had left, and I said, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I want to feel this way forever. And I attempted to do that to the best of my ability.
Wow.
And
Her as well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, she did do it to the rest of her life.
Okay.
In fact, so it's pretty gnarly stuff, man. And, I tried every conceivable way I could imagine to stop. And I remember the last time that I went to jail, knock on wood.
So basically your addiction led you into getting incarcerated.
A lot. Well, I mean, a lot for me,
Sure.
right? A lot for me for a little country boy from Effingham County whose family's never been in jail. It was a lot for me. And it's not a great place to go. I don't know, probably 90 days max in jail, just for some probation violations and holds and stuff like that. But so not an extensive amount of time, but it's enough. And my last time in was COVID. And I used to have this thing where I'd take an Uber one time and I'd get the person's phone number and then I'd pay them cash to come pick me up. So I'd kind of get around the system.
Oh, yeah.
Because I never had money on a bank account. I didn't even have a real bank account for about 10 years probably. But I had cash, right? Because it would be changed from the dope man,
Yeah.
And so this guy did that and he was going to take me back home for $20. And I said, well, I need you to stop me by the store real quick first. And I just copped and I went in the store, I went in the bathroom, which was my MO, and I did what I had to do. And that's all I remember until the cop showed up. I didn't die. I didn't nod out. I just had like a blackout experience from the heroin. And I was apparently walking through the store, just hollering at the top of my lungs. And I'd lost my phone, the $20 I was supposed to pay. It got pretty gnarly. But I remember, of course, I tried to act like a tough guy to the cops for a minute, and then for even a few minutes after that, I was like, it's all your fault that I'm going to jail. I didn't do anything wrong. And then something happened on that 10-minute jail ride to where I remembered a prayer that I'd said about 5 months before, praying to a God that I was mad at and didn't really believe in, but I asked for help. And when I got there and they were doing my mugshot, I just started crying, like just bawling like a baby. They said, dude, you're going to be okay, man. Just relax. It ain't that bad. And I was like, no, you don't get it. I was like, you guys saved my life tonight, just having that realization. Now, had I been able to carry that into my recovery journey at that time, I would have probably been all right. But I couldn't keep it, right? And I cannot draw into memory with sufficient force the memory of the suffering of even a week or a month ago, right?
Yeah.
That was me, right? And that's something from the big book, if you know.
Yep.
That was me. And I'd had some dabblings with some 6-month treatment centers here and there. The last time I went to a 6-month treatment center, I stayed there for 4.5 months, and I got this wild hair that I needed to move to California.
And this was in Georgia?
Yeah, this was when I was still in Georgia. So it's a place called Bridges of Hope. They're a nonprofit organization, and they're 60 to 90 acre pine tree farms where they put some homesteads on it, and you go there and you farm your own food. And I mean, it's a really cool program. It's kind of devised around military structure. So like within the first 30 days of being there, you got to carry your big book with you everywhere you go. If you sit down, you got to open it. You got to, a couple of terminology, a couple of things they do and some terms they use are based from the military. But I needed that kind of discipline. It is an extremely disciplined place, but I needed that, and they stepped in and brought me back from a place I didn't realize I was at. And I moved out here to California, and I started managing a sober living. And I'd done.
And that was after the 4.5 months of stringing together some sobriety?
Yeah, and I'd actually done some work from the book. I'd done some step work. I had a guy that was a quote unquote temporary sponsor that managed a place there. And I'd done some work, and I came out here with this glow, is what I was told from the guy that ended up sponsoring me here. He's like, dude, you just got this thing about you. And I come to realize now that was God, right? Doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. But I quickly got into a position of quote unquote authority, right? Managing a sober living. I thought that I was the king of all the losers, right? And I got that job, and out the window went all of the recovery.
Wow.
Ended up stealing from clients, going in their locker, and I stole about $1,700 from a client one time, and didn't use though. Right. And that's when I started understanding that my powerlessness and unmanageability has got nothing to do with the substances in my body. If that makes any sense.
Totally.
Yeah. So I did it. And I was living this double life, even a triple life at times, because dating sites were my best friend. And I had about 3 different women, and I had to be 3 different people for all 3 women. And I couldn't be broke for any of them, even though I had a meager job where I made just over minimum wage. So that's where the money went, right? I had to go keep up appearances.
So when you left Georgia and came out here. Is that when you separated from your...
Yeah, well, we separated a few years before.
Oh,
about
really?
2017. Yeah, it was just like, hey, how you doing on the phone, maybe, you know.
Sure.
But it wasn't nothing crazy, right? We
Okay.
never got back together. Once we decided that we were going to go separate ways, we never got back together. But my last weekend using was with her in Georgia. And I told you I'd been in jail. It was during COVID, so it wasn't fun. Not that it ever is.
Yeah.
Right. But I'd gotten out and I was in there for just around 30 days. And I remember very clearly being in there the first 2 weeks, and I was having like lucid, like dream states when I was awake. I was pulling tiles off the floor and seeing if I could cut deep enough to go in my wrist. Not because I wanted to kill myself. I just wanted them to take me out of there and take me to the hospital so I could maybe get a lower tab or something. You know, I was feeling horrible. And there was even a moment when I had my, you know, overalls tied around my neck. I was like, I wonder if I could pull hard enough to just pass out, because it was miserable. And yeah, I was completely delusional. And 2 weeks in, I just can't wait to get out. This is the mentality. I can't wait to get out and get my next bag, right? Something happened once I got to feeling a little bit better. My mind cleared up a little bit. I was also bunked. I was around 40 at that time. I was bunked up with an 18-year-old kid that was in for multiple fraudulent checks and all kind of crazy. He was in a big racket. And here's this 18-year-old kid looking at a 40-year-old man giving me advice and saying, man, you need to get your life in order. Which is ironic,
Right.
But he was right. And something happened then, and I said, you know, maybe when I leave here, I'll just go to sober living. I don't want to do this anymore. And I got out of jail with that solemn foundation. I'm never doing this again. I got my phone turned on, and about 4 hours later, I was high. All right, it only took me 4 hours, but it took 2 hours longer than it should have, because it took my dealer 2 hours to get to me.
Yeah.
Because I got everything delivered. Go ahead.
It's so amazing that we do that, right? We this solemn oath, right? I'm not gonna get out. This I'm never gonna use again. It's when I get out of jail, I'm gonna do right.
I know.
And also,
And then I'm calling my dealer to pick me
right,
up.
and when you're in it, and you're in it, and you want it, you can't really remember the 2 week before when you were all fucking beat up, and battered
No.
and painful.
And what's crazy is that sometimes in it, when you're saying that you're done, you really mean it. You think that you mean it at the time.
Oh yeah, you could take a lie detector test at that time, and you would pass the lie detector because you were like, I am done.
Yeah.
But you know what would happen to me, which is funny that you started saying this. As I knew I was getting the steps closer and closer to the door opening, and like a little bit less of that solemn oath, it would start to go away. Like, oh my God, I actually made it to the part where I get my street clothes back, you know? And then I'm like, okay, they haven't called me back here. And if I make it to here, I'm usually good. And they do let me out and they open the door. And then once I knew I was there, it was like, fuck, you know what?
Yeah.
It sounds good to go. I wonder what my buddies are doing right now.
Yep.
I wonder what all the guys that I was hanging out with. And you know what? You call them and you haven't seen them in 30, 60, 90 days. They forgot about all the fucking ruckus that you caused in their lives.
They want you
during
back.
that. They want you back
Mm-hmm.
for like a day.
Yeah.
Until fucking, you're that bother again. Because like I was always like homeless out on the streets.
Taking double shots. Yeah.
Stealing their shit.
Yeah, of course.
And then have them look for it.
And help. Oh, I help. One time my buddy scraped the shit off of the, like they used to have
drywall.
Oh yeah,
the stuff off the popcorn ceiling. Yeah, and he put it in the bag.
Oh my God.
The next morning, dude woke up and he puts it in the pipe and he's smoking. He's like, it's not fucking. I mean, my buddy literally went and got it out of his pocket. I mean, that's how, it's just like, dude.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's pretty gnarly, man.
It is
The
really
lives that we had
like,
to live.
for sure. And also too, what trips me out is just like the thought in our brain is so wild to me, because I did the same thing you did. Once I got released inside, I was like, oh, this is a good life. I need to change my the whole thing. And then the moment that I walked out of, my basically back into freedom, I was intoxicated within no less than a couple hours,
Yeah.
which is insane because if you had asked me that a few hours prior, no way.
Yeah.
So like the fact that our brains take us there in a drop of a dime is actually, that's what is wild.
Yeah. And I've worked with guys, you know, when I manage that sober living, I've worked with guys that want to get into treatment and they want to work in treatment. I'm always like, look, man, if it works for you, I'm happy for you, but just be real careful and look into what you're actually doing. Like, why are you doing this, right? Because I've gotten to this place now in my recovery journey that my motives are everything, right? Intentions for dick. I don't care about your intentions. What are your actions and what are your motives behind those actions?
Yeah.
And the path to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say.
Sure.
Right? And I believe that to be true. But what I did is I white knuckled sobriety for that first year. I determined to make a year because they told me when I was in treatment of 50 men, 2 will make it. And I said, I'm going to be one of them, right? So I white knuckled what I call dirtbag sobriety, right? Just still being an absolute dirtbag.
Totally.
But, you know, doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing but not using. And I was the most miserable I'd ever been in my life. Like the misery that had accompanied me by using was nothing compared to the misery that accompanied me by not using, but still being the same person, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, inevitably, I can't live with that forever, right? Because they say the same man or woman will drink or use again, and that was true for me. And I went back out. I convinced myself due to a workout injury, right? I had some shoulder pain, and convinced myself to go to the hospital. And of course, I was making a big scene in the waiting room, you know, just scream, almost.
Oh my God, I'm
crying.
dying.
Yeah,
It hurts.
absolutely. Meanwhile, there's probably somebody literally dying. But they took me back and they said, "Oh yeah, you just got a blah blah blah, whatever it might have been," and they came in with a shot. And deep down, there was this. I had this duality, right? It happened almost immediately. It said, "Tell them you're an addict." On the other hand, it was like, this is going to be fun, right? And I knew that I was going to go home and sleep really good that night, right? And I did. And I woke up the next day, and I said, damn, I haven't slept like that in a long time. Meanwhile, I forgot completely that when I was using heroin, I hardly ever slept. I just nodded off for 10 to 15 minutes at a time, burning my shorts, you know, with cigarettes.
That's how you always tell a good heroin addict, man. How many holes do they have in their
pants.
shorts?
Yeah,
their shorts, their jackets, their shirts.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
It's like, man,
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I wonder how many heroin
Burns
addicts have
on their
actually like
fingers.
fucking burned the shit out of
Yeah.
themselves.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know?
I got on social. I got on social media channels. I didn't know anybody out here, and I said to myself, I want to feel that again. I want to sleep that good, right? And I got on socials, and before I knew it, I was on the way to LA. And that's a long drive I was living in Irvine at the time. It's a pretty good drive.
Yeah.
And I would imagine a half dozen times on the way there, I was saying, you can just turn around anytime you want to, because I knew where this was about to go. But and then the delusion comes back again. Well, I done told him I was coming. I don't want to disappoint him, and all kind of crazy, nonsense would pop into my head. Or like, well, I want him to like me, because if I ever had to call him, just crazy nonsense that kept me just driving straight. And of course, they don't like you managing sober living when you're getting loaded.
Totally.
So that didn't last, and I ended up, what they call California homeless. And I'd bought a BMW, a 3 Series BMW, and I was living in the Walmart parking lot in Huntington Beach, and I thought, man, this is pretty high class shit right here. Because, I had leather seats and seat warmers when it was cold. I'm like, damn, where was this at when I was in Georgia living in the bushes,
Yeah, behind the goats.
Yeah, and but you mentioned something a while ago, man. You said that, when you get out, all your friends would want to kind of get you back. I didn't have anybody. I spent hours upon hours upon hours talking to a steering wheel or doom scrolling on my phone. I didn't, that's not because, well, yeah, it is because nobody wanted to hang out with me, but it's also, I didn't want to hang out with anybody. I loved my world being real small, because the smaller my world was, the more control I had over it and the more insanity I lived in. Right. So that's what I preferred. So I would tent up, as they say, my car so nobody could see inside of it, and just chill all day and just get high. And I had a little job. They, of course, had no idea. And then I remember that same job, I was working in a little restaurant cooking burgers. And somebody broke the back glass out of that restaurant overnight. And I remember immediately feeling grateful that it wasn't me. I was like, nah, I didn't do that,
Yeah.
And because I didn't. But I also, at the same time, I felt very guilty. Like, everybody's going to look at me and think, Kris did this, even though they didn't fully realize that I was using. Does that make sense?
So that's how for a bit you supported your habit. You lived in your car.
Yeah.
And worked at a little restaurant.
Yep. Yeah. And I remember I'd change in the front seat of the car on the way to work and shower about every 2 days. I was cooking burgers, so you know that grease is, I don't care. I got my dope, you know?
Yeah.
And I kept my gym membership, you know.
24.
So I could take a shower.
Take a shower.
Yeah. Planet Fitness out in Huntington.
Shout out to Planet Fitness, Huntington Beach.
Thank you for keeping me clean. Bodily clean.
I literally, and that Planet Fitness is like, you know, not that expensive of a membership. Like, there's no excuse to not shower.
Yeah.
Like, it's $10, $15 a month, $20 a month, whatever it is, even if it's $50 a month.
Yeah. It wasn't that much for sure, and I couldn't pay that some days. I specialized. I got a major in crackhead math is what I call it, right? And I'd pull up at a gas station. I'd have to go meet the dope man. I had $100, and I'd do some quick crackhead math and find out exactly how much I could put in my gas tank to the penny, because it was normally like something arbitrary, like $2.37 in gas. Which I said I have a BMW, but I'd always put regular in it anyway because it's cheaper and I can get further. Buy a pack of cheap cigarettes and still get as much dope as possible with that little bit of money. And I specialized in that, but all that stuff became paramount to every other interest of my life, right? Nothing else mattered. And that's people. No one else mattered either. You know, I used and abused a lot of people, but I was very fortunate that I was introduced to some real alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous when I moved here to California, and I couldn't use them, right? And they held their heads high, and they smiled a lot, and there was something attractive about that. And my life didn't truly begin until I completely gave myself over to that. However, my life did end before that. I was living in my car. I had been dating a girl in Huntington Beach. One thing I didn't realize is back east there's a different type of dope than what you get in California. And the stuff that's out here, the tar, whatever they call it, you know, is very corrosive to your veins. And I'd burn up all my veins, so I'd gotten to where I was shooting in my groin and eventually the neck. Right? And done messed up all my feet and anywhere I could see. And I was a thick guy, so it was hard to see some things. And I stayed at her house occasionally. And went to the Albertsons and had some... tried to go on my neck, and I hit, and that was the worst thing that could have happened, because I was like, this is money. I just found the jackpot. I'll never have to spend 2 hours digging for a vein again. And then 6 or 8 hours later, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, I tried to do it again, and not realizing I had to learn educationally what the difference between a vein and an artery was at that point. But I didn't realize they were right beside each other. And I hit and registered and pumped in, but I went right into my carotid artery, which feeds your brain. And I seized up and basically died. And they had to resuscitate me. And of course, I'm belligerent and kind of like half awake and half asleep when they come through. And it's all a big blur. And I woke up in the hospital. I say wake up. I mean, I came to, I was awake and conscious the whole time, but I wasn't coherent. I wasn't cognizant of what was happening. I was pretty dumb. I couldn't really speak. And I finally came to about 6 hours later. And the first thing I did, of course, was call someone at AA and say, I need some help, right? I need help. I'm going to die. The second thing I did was basically think this God again I didn't really understand or believe in, that they didn't search in my vehicle because I had dope stash in my car, and I knew that as soon as I got out of the hospital I was going right back. And that began the last month of my using and using against my will day in and day out. Right. And
Wait, you used after you got out of the hospital?
Yeah. Another 30 days.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I couldn't get it anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, you know, I work in the treatment system now on the Medi-Cal side, and I'm able to give back in that way to a nonprofit. And it's somewhat disgusting the way that certain places, you know, there's just, let me put it in very simple terms, there's way more people that need help than there's help available when it comes to government funded resources. Someone like myself, I had a Georgia license. I didn't have California residency. And basically, you know, for lack of a better term, I'm not blaming anybody for my own actions, but the system is very difficult to navigate if you need help. One of the things that I don't like in if you're like me, you may have the same experience. I believe that everyone has occasional moments of clarity. For me, mine lasted about 10 to 15 minutes. For me, that looked like me accepting the reality of my situation, saying, this is bad. This is really bad. And all those things that everybody told me, all that frothy emotional appeal that people were saying, you're going to die if you keep doing this, made sense for that 10 to 15 minutes. So I would Google, search places to go to and call places. And, I even tried to find places that dealt in body brokering. Just get me in somewhere, I'm going to die. We don't have any availability. Call us back in a week. And they most likely were trying to be more helpful than that.
Sure.
But for me, man, that 10 to 15 minutes goes quick.
Yeah.
And then the next call after that is the dope man. I don't have a solution to that, so I won't talk about that problem too much because I don't talk about problems without bringing a solution. But that's just something I'm not very keen on personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot. There is solution to the problem, but there's not anything that we can individually do, except for what we're both currently doing now, is building a powerhouse of people beside us that want the same thing for everybody that is still suffering.
Absolutely.
And that's being the voice right here on, this podcast, and you being a voice on your podcast, and continuing to grow our platforms until we're powerful enough that we force change at the highest level and say that enough is enough.
Absolutely.
Addicts are dying. Veterans are dying. I don't want to go into the topic of the healthcare system because I do believe that America has the best healthcare system in the world for emergency medicine.
Yeah, I agree.
And I wouldn't want that part to change, but other parts need to change because I would definitely not want Canadian medicine down here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's horrible. People are dying in Canada. And if you're over the age of 75, 70?
Yeah.
70?
Bottom of the bus.
Bottom of the bus.
Bottom of the bus.
Bottom of the barrel.
Big waiting list.
Yep.
Big waiting list. But I'll tell you something. There is help out there. And what we do here in the Hopeaholics, and he does too, is we spread awareness. And that's what this is all about because there are subsidies. There's government. You know what I mean? There is help out there.
There is help
People
out
just
there.
don't know.
People do need to be educated.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at.
And how do we educate them? You got to call.
Yeah.
And we can educate you.
Call. Pick up that phone.
But it's hard. Think about it. What he just said. Think about what he just said. He was in California.
Yeah.
With a Georgia license, with a Georgia identification.
Yeah.
And no home. Could he have still got insurance?
A driver's license, a new driver's license.
He could have gotten a driver, but this is like you have to
I
understand.
spend
And this
money on no license when I got
exactly.
about
well, that's the part that I was
that's my responsibility.
That's the part that I was going to say though is like we have and his moment of clarity are very short windows. Like I typically say an addict's moment of clarity, their window of getting help is about 4 hours. Typically is the max, right? 6 on a good day. But he's talking like 15 minutes, 15 minutes. He's like, okay, I know I have a problem. I know I need help.
Let's do it.
I'm going to Google, make a couple phone calls. I can't find anything. Fuck it. I'm calling the dope man. That is like, that is how it goes. And, unfortunately that is how it goes. Now if you would have been able to answer somebody would have answered you and said, okay, I need you to do this, and this, and we can have you in 4 hours. You would have been like, let's do it.
Yeah. Actually, I had a friend of mine. He owns a private care place. I'd worked for him before I relapsed, and he said, "Well, we're gonna scholarship you, but I need you to do me a favor. I can't do it right now. I can do it in a couple of weeks." And of course, this is mid-COVID, right?
Yeah.
He said, "But I want you to call me every single day at this time until then." And by God, I did it. It was probably the first time I'd ever done anything that I wasn't necessarily willing to do. Because I was just done.
Yeah.
I can't explain. I get some newcomers sometimes, man, and they'll say, "Well, what does that look like for you?" And I'm like, I just can't explain it to you.
Yeah.
You have to experience done for yourself, right? For me, it was getting beaten into a state of willingness, 100% beaten down. But as luck would have it, they got COVID in the house around the same time they were going to bring me in. So he turned me on to someone, and we worked out a different alternative, right? And then January 3rd, 2022. was the last day that and by this time I was staying away from the veins because I realized the seriousness of it, and I just started muscling black tar heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm lucky I didn't get health complications.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a buddy that you just couldn't find veins anymore. But the weird thing is I have another buddy that's been shooting heroin for 25 years, and he's just got this big, gigantic vein right here.
Yeah.
That he just goes boop every time, no problem.
Yeah.
25 years. You know,
what is muscling it? Sorry, just
muscling is like if you're same thing as taking a testosterone injection.
Yeah, it's really not recommended.
You're just shoving that stuff right into the muscle.
That's it.
Yeah, the difference is that you don't feel the rush of the drug.
Right.
You know, it's not,
I got just as high. I just didn't
yeah,
feel the rush.
you just didn't feel the rush.
Wow.
Because when you're putting it into a vein, right, it's going straight to the heart and straight to the bloodstream, straight to the brain, and it's
all right.
So muscling will keep you high and not sick.
Wow.
But hey, I hope that everybody gets gifted the same thing that you got gifted, because what you got gifted, what you were just talking about, is I call it the gift of desperation.
Oh, for
Amen.
sure.
And you know,
Kind of like getting socks for Christmas. Nobody wants it, but we all need it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Our underwear.
It's the best gift that I've ever been given. And this last time that I was given, like and I have that same problem that it talks about in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, I always forget about how painful and how horrible it was. You know, at the very end, I won't forget this one.
That's why I'm so grateful to do what we do now. Like you guys brought it up, the podcast we do too, man. It's Repair Podcast. And, to be honest with you, man, like, it's so crazy how that whole thing started.
Yeah, when did you start that?
So we launched our first episodes on March the 12th of this year.
Oh, okay.
We started an official production company last year at some point, but this thing grew from a point way beyond that. And so I came into the program of recovery this time. I moved into a sober living with 10 days sober, right? I just went through detox, real quick detox and out. And I got a sponsor while I was in detox, hit the ground running, got started on some work. And the first 30 days was touch and go. I'm not going to lie. My car still smelled like vinegar, from the heroin that had been in there.
Yep.
And it was, there was a couple of times I may or may not have looked for extra cotton because I had a tendency to flick them on the floorboard. So if I ever ran out, I could pick them up and soak them up and try to get something. And but fortunately, they cleaned my car out real good when I was in detox. And but the front end of my car was crushed in. I'd about a week prior to me getting sober, I'd ran into the back of a Ford F-150 on the highway because I was scanning for veins in my legs. I had this thing that would let me scan for veins. And I was I was driving and looking down, and wham! So I had about $10,000 to $12,000 worth of damage there, no back glass. And I'm sitting in my car one day, and all of a sudden, that same God that I'd been praying to that I didn't believe in, I believed that he could do something in my life because I was there. The evidence was clear. I was sitting and alive in my car, right? And I wasn't in the Walmart parking lot. I was in Laguna Hills in a nice neighborhood, right? So the evidence was very clear. And I just started crying. And I said, God, I need this. I need some help, and sat there for a little bit and had a bit of a conversation on first time I've probably ever done that. And I just, for some reason, I felt this almost instant relief that everything was just going to be okay. I just need to keep going through it one day at a time. And prior to that, I'd had a noun problem. So people, places, and things always disturbed me and put me in a place of restless, irritable discontent. So super, against nouns. And I started understanding, man, that I prejudged everything and everybody, right? Even AA, even recovery. And a lot of that prejudgment I can still do. But it comes across more like this is a bad thing, this is a good thing, which is still prejudgment. And that leads me to look at my past to determine what my future might look like. And it keeps me from living in today, which is one of the prerequisites for my life today. And I can still do that stuff, right? The difference is I don't have to go get drunk or loaded over it. But I had this guy that owned a sober living. He would send out a little, 3 or 4 line inspirational message every day. And I'd read that, and it was super helpful. There was a couple of times that it was like, that's the thing I needed to hear today. And it kind of grounded me further in that idea that something's looking out for me that when I can't look out for myself. And I told him one day, I said, hey man, these things are super helpful. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I appreciate it. He said, Kris, they probably help me more than they help you. So I'm glad they help, but they help me stay sober too. So I started doing the same thing. Started off with a group of 5 people that I went to detox with. They all fell off, went out, died, whatever the case may be. But I kept doing it, and more people wanted to be involved. And I was just finding a quote or finding some sort of meme that I resonated with, and I was sharing my thoughts on it and how it would relate into my day. And little along, people said, hey man, you should start a podcast. Well, first it was a book, and then they said you should start a podcast. And like, me? You know, who me? And I was still in a state of greatly reduced self-worth at that point. So I didn't see that as a viable possibility. I thought surely, you know, maybe these would be great things and somebody else could do that, but that's beyond me. So I did some self-worth work, and I continued to do esteemable acts, and little by little I said, well, why not me? Right? It went from who me to why not me. And so that's how it was born. And the thought of it was, you know, I'm in sobriety, right? That's a great place to be, and it's going to give me, just being sober is going to give me an amazing life. But recovery is going to help me keep that amazing life. And so that's what we kind of focus on. It's RPRD podcast, and that stands for Recovery Principles and Recovery Disciplines. The idea being that if someone, you know, has a problem with brushing their teeth, right? They don't like their teeth. Let's just say they don't like their teeth. I can tell someone that in that state, there's a certain set of principles and disciplines that you can practice in your daily life that will not only improve your teeth, but will also improve your life as a whole, and you'll be a much happier person for it, right? They're more likely to accept that than if I was to say, why don't you just work these 12 steps on your teeth and see how that works out for you, right? So there's a couple of sets of principles, and you know, whether that turning yourself over to a higher power is giving yourself to a dentist or God, something's being done, right? There's a decision being made. So it's the same kind of thing. Of course, that's obviously that's a little bit of a ridiculous example, but the whole thing was born out of me and my sister talking on the phone. She's got a weight problem, or had a weight problem. I've had a weight problem. Food was like the most entertaining and exciting thing that our family did. We had a big family, not in, all together. And I said, well, you know, that day, because she started doing something about it. I said, she asked me one day, she said, how did you get to a place where you are now? How did you decide you wanted to do this? And I said, well, you know, that day you looked in the mirror and you didn't like the person you saw in the mirror? She said, absolutely. And I said, and then you decided you needed to do something about it? She said, 100%. And I said, well, yeah, I did that too, but with heroin. I looked in the mirror one day and I didn't like who I saw, and I decided I needed to do something about it, so I took some simple steps. So I'm a firm believer that recovery is synonymous with healing. It's just healing. In that sense, Repair Podcast is more of a human podcast than a sobriety podcast, just like all of these platforms are. But I think it's something that tragically recovery has become synonymous with solely sobriety, to the point where people hear the word recovery and they,
shy away.
Kind of shy away from it.
Yeah.
But it's not exclusive.
Yeah.
Recovery is just healing.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody needs healing.
Absolutely.
And that's
universal.
Yeah, it's universal, and the one thing that unites all of us across all countries, everything is pain.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
I'll fight somebody tooth and nail that every human being on this earth has experienced trauma in one way, shape, or form.
yes.
Of course.
Mostly at our own making.
Yeah, and
sure.
a lot at our own making. A lot even that happens in elementary school. We all don't want to admit it, but like that's some growing experiences right there, man.
Yeah.
Shane was made fun of for being too tall and too skinny. How about that?
Yeah. Two big feet.
Too big flippers.
Flippers.
You used to be called flippers.
That was my nickname, Flipper.
Yep, and I was a fatty chatty 2x4.
Yeah.
Couldn't fit through the bathroom door.
Yeah. I was just fat boy.
Fat boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what were you? Chatty natty, or is that now?
Chatty Natty, I think, has stayed with me my whole life.
No, that's new, but
No, but I've been naturally chatty. I think for me it was just very much I was a major tomboy, so I didn't fit in with like the
girly girl.
You were a boy's boy. Boy's girl, or girl, whatever they say.
Yeah.
Girl boy.
Girl boy.
You can call it anything nowadays. It's 2024.
So
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, it's 24 and 24. You can't call it anything.
But I like
we will.
I like what you said, because I really do feel, especially right now, it's like even bringing up stuff from like when we were little kids and growing up, whether it was our own doing or not our own doing. As soon as you become 18 and you're out of your parents' house and now you're like an adult and living in this world, it's time for you to take accountability and heal yourself to be the best that you can possibly be, regardless of whatever that may be, because all of us struggle with something. And that's why I do like, in the sense, it's like the Hopeaholics is not just a recovery podcast. Yes, we talk a lot about it because it's like the principles and we're sober. However, it's so much more than that, because it's universal to everyone, whether it's struggling with your weight, whether it's struggling with food. Like, we all get it, because it's something that you have to acknowledge, realize, and then what actionable steps are you going to do to get better?
Absolutely.
And that's really what it is.
It all feels the same.
Yeah.
It all feels the same. Whatever it is that you're struggling with, I can tell somebody that I know exactly what that feels like to struggle with something.
Yeah.
Because like addiction for me, it was merely just a symptom of the underlying psychological issues that goes on within, you know, and when I talk like in public or anything, I always say that, you know, God left me here to help other people that suffer from the same thing that I suffer from. On the podcast, I follow that up with, and the thing that I suffer from is this thing between my ears.
For sure.
It's not, I don't suffer from addiction. Am I an addict? Yeah, I'm an addict in recovery today, but prior to ever even picking up a drug, I was just like what you said in the beginning. I felt restless, irritable, and discontent. I felt I had zero self-esteem.
No satisfaction.
No satisfaction. I was afraid.
Yeah.
I was afraid of everything.
Oh yeah.
You know, I was, if you called me fat, it really hurt my feelings, and I would go into my shell. Or if you called me fat, by the time I got into junior high, I'd punch you.
Yeah.
You know, so I had all these things before I ever even picked up a substance.
Yeah. And I got a friend of mine, man. He wrote this book. His name's Robert Christensen. He wrote a book called The Bug in Our Brain. Okay, and this a great book, and it's about essentially building self-worth, right? It's fundamental self-worth for success, right? And I love his book, great book. Quick shameless plug there on that. But secondary to that, he talks about this thing called a routine engine, and you pointed on it, right? And I've come to believe it's true. So essentially, as you said, to use your words, somebody calls you fat, right? You want to cower away from that, right? At some point, and somebody said earlier about this being very developmental in terms of, you know, how our brains develop in these age ranges, right? At some point for me, when I would watch my parents beat the shit out of each other, right? That's none of my business. I didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm a child, right? And I'm afraid. This is scary. I run, right? How does that develop? Well, my brain looks at that and says, when this happens, you do this thing. From that point forward, I have wired a connection, almost a straight line, right? When I'm afraid, I run from it however I need to.
Yeah.
Right? And that stuff stays with me until I cut that off.
Yep.
It takes a lot of work.
For sure.
It does take a lot of work, and we get a daily reprieve from it, because I could easily, it's still there.
Oh yeah.
Something happens and I
yeah.
get triggered. Now it's just that I do today, when you know, I actually have a motto, right, or a mantra or whatever you want to call it, but it's the first thought when is wrong.
Right. Always take the
And I question even my second thought, because my second thought could be like,
do.
I don't know what most people do.
No, most people.
But my first thought is, like, let's say you see a car pulls up at Circle K or whatever, and the person leaves their car running and just runs in real quick. My first thought is jump in that motherfucker and bounce. Right? That's my first thought. Like, that's not most people's normal first thought. But, you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you fucking mean.
My second thought is still kind of scandalous.
Yeah, it is kind of scandalous.
Grab the keys, throw them over the thing.
Yeah, fuck them up somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make their day worse.
Yeah.
But
thought wrong.
First thought wrong. Second thought questionable.
Yeah.
You know, and then let's you know, if I have to, I'll call somebody.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm making the right decision.
So one day, me and her were taking a walk, right? And part of so I love the way that and again, I'm not saying this the only way. For me, I got sober working through a series of 12 steps, right?
Yeah.
And after further evaluation of what those
Yep.
steps look like, those later parts, right? The last quarter of that
Yeah.
is really for my recovery, right? So this is what I'm going to continue to do. As you said,
Yep.
you know, daily reprieve continued on the basis of my spiritual condition. I get it in that last quarter.
Yeah.
So we were talking about step 11 the other day in a meeting, which is continue to maintain conscious contact with God, right?
Yeah.
And I'd been going through a period where, as I kind of pointed to before, I get so stuck in a cycle of looking at my past to make sense of what my future might
Sure.
look like, right? So I'm always judging my future based on what happened in the past instead of just being here. And I was in that point, and I've been doing some praying and some meditating on that kind of nature of thought. And me and her were taking a walk, and we were walking our dogs, and we were in the middle of nowhere, down in the bushes, right? And I looked down, and there's this book. It's called Buddhism, Plain and Simple. I looked at it, I picked it up, and it had some markings in it and stuff. And I was like, why is that here in the middle of nowhere? I picked it up and took it home. I set it on my desk. And of course, not being in the present, I ended up covering it over with a couple of months worth of paperwork. The other day I'm going through, and I'd gotten into a you know, more of a neutral place mentally, and I was cleaning up my desk. When I saw that book, and I said, I'm going to start reading this. The whole thing is about being present in today, the here and now. And the reason why that's important for me is because I have for all we know, in the next 30 seconds, an earthquake's about to hit. This whole
Sure.
building's going to collapse, and none of us are going to make it out of here, right? So what business do I have to worry about the traffic on the way home? Right? None of that shit matters. I'm here, right? And that keeps me in such a place of non-judgment of other people, non-judgment of my circumstances, non-comparison of my circumstances with other people or myself. It keeps me in such a position of neutrality, safe and protected within God's world, right? Because anything that I look at for the future is Kris's world,
Yeah.
right? And going back to when I first got sober, I was given the assignment to think about what life might look like at a year of sobriety, right? When I did that, and then I compare it to where I was at a year, I sold myself far short. So if I'm thinking about what I want to happen tomorrow or the next day or a year down the road, I'm probably selling myself short again, continuing on my spiritual condition and doing what God would have me do, which I feel like is what we all do already, is just communicating our past so other people can use it for their experience, but leaving it there.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And not being stuck in it. I liked you touched on something earlier too, and I think it's very important in the sense of once you remove the substance or the drink or whatnot, then you're stuck with yourself. And like, I know that I am the problem. So if I'm not consistently staying on top of what I need to do, because I work a 12-step program, so I have a sponsor, I sponsor other women, me doing the whole deal. If I stop doing that, I'm right back into destruction. And in the sense of misery, terrible. And I've tried it that way, and I've wanted to literally blow my brains out.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that was a really eye-opening moment for me too, where it's just because you're removing the so-called thing that you used to rely on doesn't mean that you're all better.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
And that's like where the staying spiritually fit is really essential.
Yeah, you need God no matter what.
Yeah.
Whether that's going to the gym because God's at the gym, God's in good food, God's in good people, God's in
God's right
Jesus.
here in this room
That's-
right now. God is in the present moment.
100%.
He's the one that
Yeah.
keeps me from taking those car keys though and throw them in the bushes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
right?
And if I'm not
Oh my God,
present, if
totally.
I'm not aware that that's the first thought, like being an overeater and being someone that's experienced struggles with weight,
Yeah.
right? My thought is, I don't feel like cooking tonight. Let me go get a pizza. But as long as I acknowledge the thought and understand that it's not necessarily, the thought is not the action, right? So as long as I'm acknowledging the thought and staying present with the thought, I can then make a different action that's more aligned with what I need to be doing in my life, right?
Yeah.
And I love that about this. And I love what you said too, man. We need God, right? I get guys all the time and we talk about the pain because we're working through the steps and we get to a place where we're really talking about some painful stuff, right? And I like the expression, you know, using your pain for your purpose,
Sure.
right? But I have a lot of guys, and I've shared that with guys, it's, well, what's my purpose? I don't know what my purpose is. Well, first of all, it's not your purpose anymore, right? It's first. But the normal question I'll follow up with is, what is your passion, right? And I've come to believe this wholeheartedly, and this is why the podcast is so important for me. I'm passionate about helping other people, right? And I've come to believe that God will never give me a passion He doesn't want me to use for my purpose. If that makes sense, I'll say it again. God will never give me a passion that He doesn't want me to use for my purpose. So that's why I say, if you're wondering, if anybody out there is listening too, and you're wondering, what your purpose is, explore your passion first, because that's God-given. And God won't give it to you if He doesn't want you to use it to help other people for your purpose.
I couldn't agree more,
I like
man.
that.
What is your passion? I feel like I just said that like last week. What is your passion? What is that thing that drives you to help other people?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? What is it? Where does it come from? I know where mine comes from. Like, I shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be sitting in these chairs. That's where our passion comes from. And what we don't want is another person to have to go as deep into that pain as we went.
Absolutely.
Like, you shouldn't be here. You hit the artery in your neck. You died.
Yeah.
And
that wasn't the first time, mind you.
Right.
That happened before.
Right.
That was just the worst time.
Wow,
I just
off.
I just inhaled saliva.
It sounded like you were going down there.
Yeah. I got so excited.
Yeah.
I inhaled
Wow.
saliva. All right. Well, that happens on the podcast here.
Yes, it does.
But I love passion. So where we didn't quite finish the exactly where it came, unless I missed it, when you actually were like, okay, let's start this podcast.
Yeah. So I've done some work in self-worth with my friend and some mentors. And it sounds oversimplified, but it was really simply the question of why not me?
Sure.
Right? If I don't do this, like you guys have been doing this for a while, that's great. And there's a certain amount of audience that you guys are going to capture and keep, and you're going to captivate them, and they're going to love you to death, and you're going to help so many people. But there's other people that just the way the world is, nobody can make everybody happy, or they please no one.
Of course.
Right? So the idea came that like there's a place for me too. I have my own brand. I have my own way of doing things. If I don't do it, there's not another me that can. Right? In my way. That's simply put in my way. So I think it's a lot like, we all have a right to be here. From acceptance is the answer.
Yeah.
We all have a right to be here. When I think I know what's good or bad for you or anyone else, I'm judging everyone else, and I'm paraphrasing horribly, but essentially that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
So I just started a production company. I mean, I don't know. I've always learned really well on my feet, and I'm a human doing, not a human being, and why sit around waiting on it to come?
Yeah.
So I started a production company, and I set about.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
mean, it sounds like an oversimplified answer, but
No, but not really. I mean, it's one of those things where it just, once you have something on your heart and you really are about it, you just start to do it. It doesn't mean that it's going to be like this, you walk into this studio, this is not what it started, it just evolves and grows, but it started with it doing.
Yeah.
You have to do something. You have to put some type of action behind whatever that is and follow through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Our started with 2 people, and then we had to have an evolution.
I like that.
It was a good
Good
one.
job.
no,
good
you
job.
messed it up because
No.
it's an evolution.
Yeah, but I got it.
Yeah.
It was a nice pun.
Yes.
It was my
Well
fucking
done.
Canadian. Thanks, buddy.
Evolution. But it's kind of like, God put it on my heart. Like literally, like God came to me and said, I want you to be the voice for the voiceless, for the people that have lost their lives to the fentanyl crisis after my son-in-law passed. And then, and also because I know what it feels like as a family member to lose somebody that you care deeply about, and pain into purpose, right? I turned my pain into purpose, and I also was told to be the hope for the people that are feeling hopeless and to inspire them to step out and tackle their pain and, become part of a movement.
Yeah.
And that's when we really joined like the whole Recover Out Loud. I was kind of like an anonymous person. I had relapsed as an owner of a treatment center, and it was really embarrassing, and I felt a lot of shame and guilt. And when I got sober this last time, I just put my head down and went to work, and didn't care what anybody said around me, and built and continued to build my treatment centers. And then we ended up with the death of my son-in-law, and I decided to start Recovering Out Loud and being a part of this movement to fight this deadly crisis, because, man, it's ridiculous. 300 people are dying every single day. Every day. Yeah. Like, it's not okay for me. Yeah. I'm not okay that, we sat here, at least 7 people already have passed away. Yeah. Due to fentanyl in America. And that's not okay. Yep. And that's where we started. And it was funny because you said, I've never wanted to be a public speaker until I started doing this podcast. Now it's like all I want to do. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like public speaking, this to me is easy because I've done so many episodes and there's no nerves here at all. Right. But to walk out on a stage and say the same stuff to a group of people that I don't know, it's a little bit more difficult now, only because it's uncomfortable and I haven't done it a lot of times. And I was actually the guy that was afraid of getting up in front of class. I ditched school. Yeah. On the days when you had to get up in front of the class and do a presentation. Yeah. Did you go to those days? Did you do them?
I had stomach aches.
Stomach aches?
Yeah, I had stomach aches. I remember those days. It was nerves. It was nerves, bro. It was all nerves.
It's scary because at the core, it's based on fear, and you want people to like you, and you want to be accepted.
And there's that routine engine, right? So when I'm fearful, what do I do?
I run. I run. And on top of that, if I get really nervous, I start sweating, and that can be embarrassing. But you know what? I'm at a point right now where, if I have to fall and fail in front of the whole entire world to get my point across, then I will do it, and I'll continue to do it, because even though I do still have fear of getting up there and doing that, I'm going to do it anyways. Yeah. Because I don't want 300 people to have to go through the pain of losing somebody, and I don't want people to think that they can't just pick up the phone and ask for help and say, "Hey, I'm hurting." Yeah. You know how long I couldn't ask for help. What ended up finally happening to me is the bail agent came and kicked in my door and took me to county jail where I couldn't get out, and that's where I detoxed.
I had a county intervention too.
And then finally I had some sanity, enough clarity to be okay. Yeah, I'll go to treatment now.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing about failing in a space like this, who am I? Right? Who am I? And my sponsor, he put it in a way that was both ego crushing, which it should be. Yeah. And he's talking about sponsorship, of course. He says, "Kris, I want you to keep something in mind when you're working with these guys, because I've helped a lot of guys, thank God, right? I've been able to be present and see a lot of miracles." Mm-hmm. But he said, they don't want you, man. They want God, right? And if I do fail, at the end of the day, if the worst thing that happens is people realize I'm a human being, that's pretty good.
It's pretty awesome, right?
That's pretty good.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. We're allowed.
Yeah, for sure.
We're not any better than anybody else,
or worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just a vessel, and when I do the best, for even on this podcast or wherever, and that's why kind of with our podcast, we sit down and we start having a conversation, because we just want the moment to happen, and to God, this is our vessel out to the world of God. Yeah. Of his message. And even when we speak, I think, I'll speak for myself, but before I go and speak, I just ask God to speak through me, and just let me be a vessel of his word. Yeah. And then I get up there and go, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. It's funny, man. I remember coming into a program and I remember I'd have to share, no solution at all. But I'd be like, I'm going to have the best fucking share. I'm gonna wow everybody in AA, man. Everybody's going to be praising me for the next 6 months about the share I give tonight. Yeah. And then I got into recovery, real recovery. I'm like, that shit don't matter, man. Are you saying something that's helpful? Are you giving solution? And another thing I get asked by guys, how do I don't know how to share meetings. I'm like, look, man, you got any problems going on in your life? They're like, no. I said, well, good, share about that. And I said, and then only if they say yes, I say, share about the problem and then share about the solution.
Yeah, good.
What are you doing about it?
Yep,
right?
totally.
I mean, it's simple.
It is simple. It's like an easy program, but it requires work.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy because it's what you said is another reminder to myself in the sense of, obviously, you know, we all have created the podcast and have a voice about not only the fentanyl crisis and what it has. I mean, if all of us were in our addiction currently right this second, for sure we'd be dead. Oh, no ifs, ands, or buts, because it just has come into the United States like wildfire. And then second is one that I used to live, like you mentioned, multiple double lives. That was me, because I didn't want anybody to know that I worked a 12-step program, had an addiction, or went to AA, or had this so-called problem where it's like, you know, I completely saw myself totally not doing what I'm doing currently. Until I walked into this office July 28th just to share my story. And then that's when all of a sudden I walked into my purpose, my why.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my goodness, I've never been more like fulfilled in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of really cool things that you would think that I would be chasing. They were like more of like a high. It was like a drug to me to go out chase the next job, the next gig, the next thing. And then this one has taken the cake.
Yep.
You know, like I'm forever grateful. And I think I always say my God is so funny, because the one thing that I used to hide is now I'll talk about sobriety, I'll talk about recovery, I'll talk about pain, I'll talk about whatever it is till I'm blue in the face with anybody that wants to listen, because it's not only is it so imperative right now because so many people are dying every single day because of fentanyl, but it's also nothing to be ashamed of. There's no shame in getting help. There's no shame in working on yourself daily to become the best person that you can possibly be. Because if I didn't do it, then, you know, I couldn't be sitting here today with these guys. Yeah. I couldn't be a part of this movement. I wouldn't be able to be a good businesswoman or a good spouse. Like that alone, relationships, you have to be able to, what are you bringing to the table in your relationship? Not what are they going to bring to me? Yeah. That's, I was always like, take. And so I feel like there's no shame in that. So it's like incredible what God can do once you get out of the way.
Absolutely. And that's kind of, life works that way for me too, right? When I see what I can bring to life, life gets better instead of what I can take from it.
For sure.
Because I've taken so long anyway.
Yeah.
Like I've taken for so long. You know, and I don't know, like from the lowest of the low to the most popular person in the world today, 100 years from now, nobody's going to be remembered anything that they did, right? Nothing. So I'd rather spend my time in a place where I can be helpful, I can feel whole, I can make someone else feel like they're important to whatever degree that I'm able. And it's just, none of it matters. It's all inconsequential to the end of the day. It's inevitable. We're gone. Like we're just here for a fleeting moment. So what am I going to do with it? You know? So I've been working really hard, and I continue to work really hard to just stay here. Enjoy it while I got it.
For sure.
Well, damn.
Yeah.
This was a really good podcast.
Yeah,
and congratulations.
Yeah,
because,
congratulations, bro.
You know, you have a powerful story, and people need to hear stories like that, because sometimes when you think that there is not any hope and no light, you hear someone like yourself where you literally basically got brought back to life, and now you're doing what you're doing, and you are able to be an asset to society as the opposed. And people need to hear that part too, because there is help. There are people out there that are willing to walk you through whatever it is that's going on, and to get you the treatment that you do need. It's not easy, but it's definitely out there. It's important.
Yeah, hopefully like we can continue, you know, your podcast and the Hopeaholics can increase that gap of that window of time that somebody is like looking for help. Maybe they just listen to the podcast and they're like, you know what? I mean, you got to get messages like that say, your podcast kept me sober today. Like what the?
Sure.
Like what the?
Yeah, so it's weird, man. Like we're new to the game, right? And I work in a nonprofit capacity, and I go to work at our center over in Trabuco Canyon, and I'm the only man there. It's an all women's facility for human trafficking victims and substance use disorder, and I'm the only man on site, right? And I go to my little office, I sit in there, I shut the door, and just off my office is the living room, right, where these girls live, and I come out the other day, and I think I had on one of our sweatshirts, right? And I come out, and they were like, "Oh my God, you're the guy from the podcast." And then she saw my sweatshirt. She said, "That one." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you." She said, "No, we love you. We love you." And I was like, "Hold on." I said, "I'm nobody special. I just tell my story, and talk to a couple of people." And they said, "No, what you're doing is special. You help us."
Yeah.
So I found out they've been showing it to people during groups.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it was a powerful experience. I don't say that to say that like somebody recognized me.
Sure.
I say that to understand that like I've had 2 moments in my recovery where I understood the power that we carry in other people's lives. The first one was in that first 30 days. I was told to call several alcoholics every day and check in on somebody else. I was that self-centered. I needed to just do that. So I called this person and we talked for just a minute. Don't even remember what was said. He happened to be riding with someone else in the program in the car with him, and they had me on Bluetooth. You ever had an experience before where you're talking to someone and they say something as they're hanging up and you hear the last few words they say, This is what happened, and I heard that guy say, "Oh my God, I can't believe he just called me out of the blue to check on me. That just made my day." And he didn't know I heard it. I don't know that he ever did know I heard it, but that made my day.
Yeah.
Put it in my mind. We have power to be able to change lives. My life and my story is important. What I do and how I interact with other people around me is important. And then this other experience that just recently happened.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I love that shit.
Yeah, me too.
For somebody that used to feel useless, worthless, the biggest piece of shit on earth, that's a powerful statement.
It's huge.
Yeah, right? It really truly is.
Yeah.
I love it.
God is good. God is good. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you
you.
We
so
appreciate
much.
you.
Thank y'all. I appreciate what y'all doing too, and
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks.